Well, tell me, mama, what's going on? Tell me, darling, what's going on?
Welcome back, everybody. The Bacon and Egg Show 2022 is here. Show number 71. Back at it after a little hiatus of holidays and travel and adventure and God knows what else. COVID. Here we are. We're back. As the saying goes.
The show is back.
We are back. Jay, what is going on, man? It's been a while. Glad to be back at it. Let's jump right into this stuff, man. What do you got?
Yeah. Let's hop right in, man. So let's hop into this cup of coffee. So last night, Lady Horns, the women's team is off to a pretty good start this season, ranked 9th or 10th, depending on what poll you look at. But they were upset last night at the Drum by a Texas Tech team that played a really good game, and the women did not had their best effort out there. And, on this show, we have a lot of admiration for Vic Schaefer and the brand of basketball that he's brought to campus for the women, and just sort of his mindset in general.
Yeah, his personality, just the way
just the way he handles his business, And so last night, in the midst of all this at halftime, there was a little bit of a dust up that you may have heard of with the Texas Tech staff and Vic Schaefer. And what happened was there was a discrepancy with the official scorebook as to who was supposed to start the second half for Texas Tech. And there was some confusion there. And the Texas Tech staff were basically, from what it sounds like, verbally abusing the bookkeepers and the scorekeepers and everything that are there at the table. And as soon as Schaefer caught wind of that and realized what was going on, he went over there and basically told them where they could stick it. And today on the Craig Way extravaganza midday here locally, Big Schaefer is on with our guy Craig every day, or every week, I should say, once a week. And he was asked about it, and he said, look, like, you're not going to come into the Irwin Center. You're not going to come into our home and treat people that way. It's just not going to happen. Like, it just amplifies the level of respect that I have personally for Coach Schaefer and the type of environment that he's trying to create here. He's trying to take this program that hasn't been able to get over the hump. Like, we've seen some moderate success, but nothing consistent, and nothing to the level of where you would say that program is for what the administration would really expect out of it. And I got to tell you, man, just knowing that that's the guy that's patrolling the sidelines and running that program for the women on the 40 acres, I don't know, man, it makes me feel good. It makes me proud that guy's on campus.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what, especially after the tournament run last season, and now that he's starting to get the recruiting going, and it's, I can't think of a better person to be in charge of the program. I wish actually he could run multiple sports on the 40 acres. I think we joked about that whenever Shaka Smart didn't return. It was kind of like, well, can he coach the men's team too? But, and we'll get into the Runnin Horns here in a little bit, but that's, just stand up for yourself. That's one of those things. Just show some fight, and like, good for him for standing up for the scorekeepers. I mean, they got to deal with some abuse anyway as it is, and it's like, don't come in here and you can't do that. But, well, man, let's get into some football action here. The last time we recorded, we're getting up close to signing day. We hit on some of that stuff. I know we've been discussing kind of having a big second signing day show to kind of wrap all of the recruiting class together and preview spring ball. So perhaps that's coming here in the next few weeks, but we've had some changes otherwise in the coaching staff. And Jay, you want to kick this thing off? Where do you want to start with the running backs position? That was kind of the big one there.
Yeah, let's start with the running back coach position here. Stan Drayton, who's beloved around these parts, done some really nice work, obviously has, gotten some guys into positions to be successful. And Stan Drayton has taken the head coaching job at Temple. So he's got himself a head coaching gig. Congratulations to Coach Drayton. He's moving on, but somebody leaves, somebody comes in, and it feels like Steve Sarkisian is, I don't think he's made a decision yet that has been met with the type of uncertainty that some of the coaches in the past have. We see these revolving doors. There aren't any coordinator changes being made this year, and I think that that's smart. Like, I don't think that we should, on the defensive side of the ball included.
Yeah.
Like, I know that defense really struggled, but to have some consistency in this program, even if you go from dead last to fifth in this conference this year, you're going to be a better team.
Well, and it's year one. You're talking about, massive overhaul of the roster, those kinds of things. I know people were calling for like Kwiatkowski to be canned and all those things, but like you can't. Now, if we're having this conversation next year about the defense, then maybe, especially with who's coming back on the defensive side of the ball, that's a different story. I think once you get in through year two and these guys are starting to build it, that's a little bit different. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Like all of his decisions have been coaching wise. It hit from his initial staff being hired to who he retained on the staff from the previous regime, specifically Drayton. And we'll get to Andre Coleman in a minute, but those were pretty like, okay, well, if you're going to hang on to a couple guys, those are probably a good couple to hang on to. So like his decision-making with the staff, I think has been good. Real quick on Drayton before we get into the new hire, like, people go, oh, Temple, that's not that big, why would he, that's not that great of a job kind of thing. I disagree. That's what Matt Rule turned into. He was successful there, turned that into the Baylor gig and now an NFL coaching job. I mean, you can argue about his success in the NFL, but he's shown that if you're successful at Temple, it can lead to bigger things. And yeah, best of luck to Drayton on that. But yeah, let's get into the new hire then. Yeah.
So Tashard Choice, Cowboys fans may recognize that name. He was the running back coach at Georgia Tech most recently. And this is seen as a hire that if you're going to lose a guy of the quality of Stan Drayton, Tashard Choice is one of those coaches that is just quickly on the rise. When you think about some of the younger names in coaching circles that are really highly thought of, Tashard Choice is one of those names. And to be able to bring him in, to pluck him away from a Georgia Tech program and where he's had some success and bring him here, I think that that's going to be something that we look back on. If Steve Sarkisian's tenure here in Austin is successful, that these positional coach hires that he's making early on are going to be a key to that. And we're going to look back and see that. And I think that Tashard Choice is going to be one of those that we look back on and say, man, that was a really, really solid hire, all things considered, with the way that he's thought of around the country in coaching circles, and to be able to pull him from Georgia Tech, isn't that where he went to school too? Mm-hmm. Like, isn't that his alma mater? So to be able to pull him from his alma mater where he was currently coaching the position that he played there, and to be able to get him to come to the University of Texas and take over a running back room, which honestly, it's the most talented to me with what we've seen productivity wise on the field. It's the most talented position on this roster, top to bottom, most talented room. And now you've got a guy who's thought of very highly and gets the most out of his running backs as it is. And I think this is a great hire. Kerry, what were your thoughts on the Choice hire?
Yeah, huge fan of it. There's a little thing related to the Georgia Tech aspect that will tie in with the other coaching change that happened here that I found really intriguing. And we can get to it here in a second, but you think about the offense that Georgia Tech has ran over the years. And that's what it's kind of amazing. The wide receivers they've had come out of that program when they're like a run first option, traditionally they have been, an option based running team. And you think about the new wide receiver coach that's coming in and the offense that he's created and the offense that he is, it's kind of being seen as on the rise and innovative, and the option aspects of that offense that tie in with that. And if you're Steve Sarkisian and you're looking at trying to innovate and be at the cutting edge of where these offenses are heading in college football and how to stay, ahead of what defensive scheme changes, it's kind of interesting to see that, Tashard Choice, given the history with, an option program and as a running back, then you combine that with Brennan Marion and his offense that combines some option principles. This is going to be really interesting. And we talk about how do you get some of these guys on the field at the same time? Well, if you're going to be, that's kind of where this is looking like it's heading, right? Like
when your most talented room, you got to find a way to get your most talented players on the field, period. Right. And whether that's a freshman last year and Xavier Worthy, whether that is having both of your talented running backs on the field at once. And now, with Brooks also really showing out, and it's not just the top two guys in that room. There's a lot of people that have shown Robinson, they can play. Keelan Robinson, thank you. That's it was escaping me there. Is you get as many of your most talented players on the field as you can. It's not the wide receivers on this roster right now. I don't think anybody's going to argue with us that putting more wide receivers on the field with this current roster is going to make you the most successful offense, because it's just not there right now. Maybe when some guys get healthy and we see some of those guys actually give productivity on the field, that opinion may change. But being able to run these concepts that, and we'll go ahead and talk about, you mentioned in Brennan Marion, the new wide receiver coach who they hired over from Pitt. This triple option spread hybrid type of offense that he created, the sort of concepts that he'll bring along with him, the choice stuff with the triple option and the sort of those concepts, it makes you feel like Sarkisian's not just being like, oh, who's a big name that I can hire and bring in here? It's more about who's going to work well together, the type of thing. And it's also Steve Sarkisian not thinking, I'm the smartest guy in the room and you're going to fit to me.
Bingo.
I'm going to be moldable. I'm not, and I think we know, where I'm going with that, with the previous regime who always, maybe felt like they were the smartest person in the room. This lets me know that Steve Sarkisian is willing to accept, okay, this is this, and not just pull from this little bitty box. Right.
He's pulling in some of the brightest young minds in college football. And we talk about with Brennan Marion, like the triple option aspect of it, which I think is big, but did his guy there at Pitt end up winning the Biletnikoff, or what? I know he was a finalist. I missed the.
I think he did, yeah.
But like,
I'll check on that while you're talking.
That means he's coaching wide receivers still pretty well. And that's where not only does it show me that Sarkisian is more than wide open to bringing in a bunch of intelligent minds on the offensive side of the ball with innovative concepts to help figure something, and kind of learn from them, and they all learn from each other. It also shows me, given, Andre Coleman not being retained, that there's certain levels of expectation or certain expectations that are going to be held to account. And that's where you just mentioned it, this wide receiver room, whether it was the development, the recruiting, the personnel management, whatever you want to call it, Andre Coleman did not meet those expectations this past season. And again, we saw this in the recruiting class and the players that were missed on. Worthy, you can basically count as a Sarkisian recruit, and he was the top performer. Andre Coleman, otherwise, this was not. This is one of those things where you go, well, at least he's holding everybody to account on that. But it was a great opportunity to go get Brennan Marion as well. And this is going to be really interesting to see, I think, with Choice and Marion on the recruiting front. But just the concepts that I think we're going to, potentially see coming here in the next, over spring ball and throughout. But
yeah, 100%. Yeah, you were right. It's Addison was the receiver that won the Biletnikoff, led the nation in touchdown receptions and third in receiving yards. And that's the sort of thing at Pitt, by the way. And that's the sort of thing where you look at the type of quality that a coach can bring, and that doesn't happen by accident. Like, sure, that he's a talented player, but to be able, again, to know the guys on the field when you need to make a play, the right guys are going to be on the field when you need plays made. Not, and if when you have somebody like an Xavier Worthy, who has already shown that by the time he's done here, the expectation is that he'll be in that conversation for a Biletnikoff as the top wide receiver, an All-American type thing, an All-American type player. Like, to know that you're going to have somebody there that has gotten somebody across that finish line before and has shown that not only can he help develop players, but schematically, conceptually, he's a guy that you can depend on to not just manage a positional room, but contribute to the offense as a whole. And I think that's what excites me the most about Marion, is that this is not just a wide receiver babysitter.
Well,
he's going to contribute to the offense in general.
Exactly. And that's what, like, these are, we talk about like this triple option thing and like Choice coming over from Georgia Tech, and they've been run heavy, all those kinds of things. We're not talking about this Texas offense going to like 3 backs and just running triple option. We're talking about a guy that his offense won, his concepts and his innovations got his wide receiver, the Biletnikoff, not to mention Pitt's quarterback Pickett is actually, he's going to end up with a fairly nice paycheck coming in the NFL here soon as well. And you talk about what, if you can get Quinn Ewers to essentially play at the level of Kenny Pickett, and which, I mean, Pickett's proven it, Ewers hadn't played it down in college. Well, I think he did technically play it down with Ohio State, but the point stands that, he hasn't proven himself yet. But if you can, there's just so much talent and potential here. And you introduce these offenses and these innovations, and when you have these minds in the same room cooking up a scheme, it's exciting. I mean, we'll see how it plays out. We're talking about a team coming off a 5-7 season, but there's at least something that shows that the tweaks are being made, whether it's with the coaching staff, it's being changed. They're not just sticking to a certain kind of, stubborn philosophy and only hiring coaches that fit that brand. And it is encouraging. I'll say that.
And Steve Sarkisian is not giving up play calling. Like, he's going to call plays again this season. And that's just, that's one of those things where you look at how many head coaches across the country successfully call plays for themselves at a high level and at a championship level. And you could count them on one hand, probably, but that's what Texas hired Steve Sarkisian to be, that coach, to bring this offense to the next level and to take this entire program to the next level. And when you start bringing guys in that don't 100% align with everything that you were about before, because you know that what they can bring to the table can help your team be successful, that is a sign, that's a reason for optimism for me if you're a Texas fan. And it's going to allow this program not just to be so in one lane again, because I'm the smartest person in the room and this is the lane we have to go in. That's what I feel like. Can this Texas team finish games next year? Can this Texas team depth-wise overcome some of those obstacles that they couldn't this year? Those are some of the other questions that need to be asked. But from the offensive side of the ball, I feel like Texas fans have to feel good about some of these changes that have been made, the hires that have been brought in, and the fact that Steve Sarkisian is willing to adapt as a coach and not stay set in his ways. So, I think both of these hires are what needed to happen. And we'll see what happens here with a program, again, that did not qualify for a bowl game, that immediately lost. This is when Charlie Strong came in and like 9 or 10 guys got broken off and just got kicked out of the program. That to me is a different kind of cleaning house. When you look at, there are transfers that are happening within this program, and people are leaving, and that's okay. I just feel like it feels different. To me, it feels like a different sort of cleaning house, a different sort of program overhaul that is not happening all at once, but rather gradually as this program becomes the program that Steve Sarkisian wants it to be. And I feel like that although me, you, and our friend Longhorn Insider, Dr. Roto college basketball contributor Mike Holland, as before in our season preview, I should say, none of us thought this was a 10 or 11 win team last year. We didn't know it would be a 5-win team.
No.
But we knew that there was some building to be done. And we're seeing that progress made now with the way that this recruiting class was built, with the way that Sarkisian is hitting the transfer portal. This recruiting class is not done, by the way. If there's a reason that we're waiting on talking about a recruiting wrap up, because with the second national signing day coming up, and with what appears to be a pretty, substantial offensive lineman recruit that could be coming down the pipe, and then who knows what else? Like, we're talking
transfer
about
portal action. There's a lot that's going to play out between now and the second signing day.
So we'll see what goes on there. But I guess just from a perspective of the coaching hires that have been made this offseason, and we're not even talking about the unknown here with a Gary Patterson who has been linked to Texas at different times, but that sort of cooled off a little bit. I think he's sort of weighing his options collegiately, in the professional level as well. But there's still a lot to be done here, and I think Longhorn fans should feel good about the way that this offseason has gone, as good as you can feel coming off a 5-7 season.
Cautious optimism.
Yeah,
cautious
absolutely.
Optimism. It's
100%.
Yeah, and I think it's spring ball, as always around here, is going to be very, very, very interesting, especially when you're talking about 5-star generational talent. Quinn Ewers coming in. You've got honestly, in a guy that can be kind of considered, generational is such a strong word, but you got Bijan Robinson coming back. You're going to have him in the backfield. You mentioned the turnover, from Charlie Strong kind of stuff. And I just want to note something on this, and also with Herman, the turnover that we would see under Tom Herman. I think the reason it feels different is because you think about the guys that could leave or that could have left that opted to stay. You're talking about, Coburn coming back, Overshone coming back. You just, all these names on defense and stuff that have opted to come back. I think, to me, that's why it feels different. That's why there's kind of this notion of maybe something is going right out, 5-7 season aside, which I know that's 5-7 season aside. How was the play, Mrs. Lincoln? But other than that, but there's something in the locker room, at least, that's kind of all right, we believe what's happening here. Guys that have been under the previous regime are going, okay, I have trust in what's building here and what's going on. It's not just this oh man, I'm leaving at the first chance I get. It doesn't feel that way. So, we'll see. If they keep building the roster the way that they are, it's hard not to be cautiously optimistic, but you still got to play the games. So we shall see.
Yeah, we're having this conversation on January 6th, and we haven't even seen the national champion crowned from this season that we're talking about the Longhorns finishing up. So obviously there's a long way to go here, but I think cautious optimism will be the theme going into spring ball for sure.
Yep, absolutely. Well, let's talk about some cautious optimism on another program that's actually in the middle of the season right now. It's been a while since we talked about them, but let's get into the Runnin Horns. Before we get into detail, if I told you that since the last time that we recorded, this team's gone 6-0 and they're 2-0 in conference play, and one of those was a road win over a decent Stanford team, you'd have to say you're feeling pretty good about this program at the moment, right? If that's what you told me. But how do you feel about this team right now?
Yeah, that's a very fair question, man, because you're sitting there 12-2, you're 2 games into your conference play, and
top 15 team in the country. I think currently 14 at the latest poll, right?
Yeah, I think depending on where you look, about 14, I think that sounds about right. And we're looking at a team that we knew that this was going to be a team that was going to have to find their rhythm as the season went on. When you change over,
God, talk about roster
70% of your roster,
exactly.
And you're bringing in these guys that we compared to putting together a college basketball all-star team. When you talk about all conference players and guys leading their conference in rebounds and
top prospects for the pros that are trying to boost their stock a bit,
guys that averaged 19 points a game last year, these are guys that you can throw all this talent together, but how well are you going to mesh? And we hadn't, I think the last time we talked, I don't think Dylan Disu had played a minute yet.
No, he hadn't returned yet.
And now he's back playing 20 minutes a game, contributing on the defensive side of the ball. And to answer your question on how I feel, I'm not sure yet, man, because I don't know that the tests have been there. I think the slow starts, and this was a concern of ours and Mike's as well, the offensive pace, being an issue. It's the top defense, depending on what measurable you're looking at. They have the top defense in the country. I mean, and we knew that was Chris Beard's brand of basketball coming in. But
the schedule doesn't quite back up the feeling of like, all right, this feel like you kind of go, yeah, but look at the schedule.
Sure. Absolutely. And that's where I think the hesitancy is by a lot of people that are paying close attention and not just looking at a record and game results, that when this Texas team has been truly tested by a tournament level team, or maybe I wouldn't say tournament level, maybe by somebody that you feel like is going to be a Sweet 16 or bust type of a team.
Yeah, but like when we talked about the Gonzaga game, where like it's Gonzaga, best team in the country. They went up there, they showed some fight. There's nothing to be mad about there. They hung in that game, they hung around, and but that was a big test. But that was super, super early on. Then you go, okay, well, what about Seton Hall later on? And that was one we go, all right, Seton Hall, top 25 type team. This is a team that, Mike was really high on Seton Hall going into that game. Yeah. And, close loss on the road, raucous environment. Okay, this is a team that's still trying to figure it out. I know they get the Stanford win, but I remember us in the pregame, or the, kind of our preseason preview with this team. I kind of remember our discussion being like, there's these spaced out tests. They get to play it, they get to beat up on some teams, and then they have a test. And the good thing is we should know pretty much what this team is going to look like by the time we reach conference play. And do you feel like that's the case? Do you feel like we're 2 games into league play now? Do you feel like what this team is? Do you think they know who they are 2 games into conference play? Or is this still going to be a work in progress? And I mean, are we really going to get too far and deep into conference play without really knowing what this team looks like, who they are?
I think the identity is very clear in the sense that they're going to play good defensive basketball that will keep them in games, even when they're not playing their best. And that's a Chris Beard thing. And the fact that he's brought that over and nothing has changed from who we thought we were going to get out of Chris Beard, right? And I think that's the positive thing right here, is that the identity of a Chris Beard basketball team is you're going to play tough defense. You're going to make it hard on the other team to be successful, and it's up to you to put yourself in a position to score the basketball. Now, this motion offense that we've had.
And I lost Jay. Get him back in here. There he is. Get him back in.
Here we are. Sorry about that, guys. The Chris Beard motion offense that we had voiced concerns about, that's reared its head here. I mean, we've seen the slow pace, the slow starts, having to rely on defense to score defense leading to offense, and that's all well and good. And you do have to win games like that, especially in the tournament, come tournament time. But I don't think this team still fully understands itself. I don't think that, and as this rotation shrinks, we see a Marcus Carr playing 38 minutes or whatever, 37 minutes. Timmy Allen's playing 35, 36 minutes now. These Ramey's playing 38 minutes. Oh, Chris Beard loves Courtney Ramey, and I love to see that. I loved it. I love it. The fact
you love some Ramey ball.
I love some #Ramey ball. The fact that we're seeing this rotation shrink down, our guy Brock Cunningham only played 4 or 5 minutes against Kansas State. This is shrinking down. Trey Mitchell only played 10 minutes. Christian Bishop played 16. Disu played 20. Devin Askew played 21. Askew's still not looking for his own shot, which that's just the type. He's just the pass first point guard. I think we need to accept the fact that that's just who he is at this point in his career. But my point is as this rotation shrinks and shrinks, we'll have a better idea of the identity of this team.
Yeah.
And we'll have a clearer idea, and that they'll get more practices under their belts. They'll get more game time under their belts together. How do you feel about where this team is and where you think they can be, just based off of what we've seen through 14 games?
I agree with you on the identity. I think we know what that is. Like in terms of, like you mentioned, the defense, this rotation is going to shorten up. I still have questions about how good they can be. Right now, to me, 14, 15 in the country seems about right, which, again, we go into this season. If you would have told me, like, okay, this is going to be a top 15 type team, they might finish, they could compete for maybe second or third in the Big 12. Baylor's obviously, they haven't taken a step back.
Not one.
So I think saying like, well, this is a team that can win the Big 12 might be a little premature. But I think if you would have told me that going into the season, this would be a top 15 team, a team that can get to a Sweet 16 potentially, again, bounces go in certain ways, those kinds of things, I think we all would have said like, yeah, that sounds about right. And we'd be happy with that result. Year one for Chris Beard. But, I think the roster does kind of lend itself to say it, like there might be a little bit of disappointment in that with the quality of the players on the roster. Like you almost kind of feel like this should be more of a top 10 type team. And that maybe not, okay, Sweet 16 good. Yeah, but maybe that feels like a little bit of a disappointment if they don't reach an Elite Eight. And the good thing is I feel like the style of basketball translates well to the tournament. I think that's,
totally.
So I do have some confidence about that, but like, and to be fair, the conference schedule so far, the 2 games in, West Virginia is decent, but like it hasn't exactly like lent itself to saying, okay, we know how good the team's going to be. I think that's coming because coming up, they have a trip to Stillwater. Oklahoma State's not great this year. I think they're 7-5 right now overall. But that's a game that Texas should go up there and win. I feel like at this point.
Yes.
Oklahoma comes to town Tuesday night. I think we'll be in the building for that. We'll see how COVID protocols go down. Amongst the, God, who knows? We entered stage 5 today in Austin. We'll see what that even looks like. But Oklahoma comes to town, and then Iowa State on Saturday the 15th, number 11 right now in the country. This January is not like, this is not an easy run for Texas. They wrap up the month with Tennessee, who's 18th in the country right now, then follow that up with a game at Tech. That'll be fun. Iowa State again, then Kansas and Austin. We're going to find out really quickly. Maybe not over the next, week or two necessarily, but we're going to find out like the Big 12 is going to sort itself out. So I think our questions about how good this team is are going to get answered. I just don't know right now. I think that's the toughest part because of that non-conference schedule. It's hard to say like, okay, I know that this is a top 15 team. I don't.
No, it's hard to say that. And then, Chris, and new head coach coming in, trying to piece together a non-conference schedule that will allow you to build your team to get, especially with that much roster turnover, you're not going to schedule your non-conference isn't going to be packed with Power 5 tournament teams. It's just not going to happen that way. And if you want this to go the way that you want it to go, you know what I'm saying? So
yeah, absolutely.
That's a run though, right there. When we talk about from January 15th to February 12th, even if you go all the way to February 19th,
I didn't even go past the Kansas game. Yeah. Then a trip to Waco.
Kansas, and then it's Baylor in Waco. And then you have to go to Norman, and then you get Texas Tech at home. It does not, there's going to be a 2.5-3 week stretch there where we will absolutely learn where this team stands and where they are in terms of their development and how well they mesh together and how well Chris Beard has been able to, I guess, sort of establish himself as a coach with this basically brand new roster. and obviously to him especially, but in terms of cohesiveness as a team, you don't normally come in as a new head coach where 70% of your roster hasn't played together before. And being able to extend this sort of period of time where you can get more practices and more games under your belt, especially within the conference, before you really hit that stretch where you learn real fast. It's time to nut up or shut up. And we'll see how this team is built and put together and how well that they've accepted the coaching of Chris Beard. It's going to be fun. We'll be in the building for a lot of those games. Like you said, if it's not going to be here next Tuesday, you know, the Kansas State game the following Tuesday, Oklahoma State on the 22nd, and then Tennessee on the 29th. Like, those are all games at home where we should be able to sit down and get an in-person view at how this club is developed. And I'm excited for it, but I think, again, the theme here is cautious optimism. You know,
right.
Can this team come out of that stretch with only taking a loss, maybe two? I mean, yeah, they can definitely get through there. That'd be great. But could it go the other direction? Could we see this Texas team absolutely take a step backwards, maybe even fall out of the top 25 at some point? And I think the answer to that is yes as well. So
yeah, because we don't know.
We don't know. And Chris Beard is earning his money in year one with what we're seeing and we'll see how this goes. He's already earning that paycheck. And
I'll say this.
Yeah.
No, I'll just say, if you, on that note about like coming out of this run, if we're having a conversation at the end of that run, we get to mid-February and we're talking about, you know, this team looks like a top, ranked around 14 or 15 sounds right. The feeling of saying that after that run feels a whole hell of a lot different than saying it right now. Because if they can navigate that run and still be ranked in the top 15 or thereabouts, I'd say that they navigated it pretty well. You know, It's not going to be perfect. They're not going to go undefeated through that run. If they do, they're going to be top 3 in the country.
Right.
But I don't see that happening. But I also don't see them getting swept out of that run either. I think, basketball's a funny sport. I mean, they could, there's a lot of bounces can go different ways. And this team, the slow starts they got to get over. But like, this is not a team that's going to get blown out by anybody. That's not their mentality. And so you hang around in these games, you keep it close, you keep in the fight, and who knows how it goes. But if we're talking about this as a top 15 team after that run, then I'm feeling pretty good about it. I'm feeling good about this team moving forward into the last part of the season.
Yeah, the schedule has lined up really nicely for Chris Beard to have the time to be able to get this team to mesh together. And after they go through that run into mid-February that we talked about, you got a TCU game at home that they should win, on the road to West Virginia, which they should win. And then they finish the season at home against Baylor and then on the road at Kansas. We're going to see tournament level basketball played even before the conference tournament starts. And that, to me, we'll learn and we'll know. And the good thing about college basketball, as you well know, Kerry, is it doesn't matter what you just got to get to the tournament. Get to the big dance, right? Just get there. And like you mentioned earlier,
ask Abilene Christian.
Exactly.
I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. I was trying to start off this new year. I was trying to start off this new year positive and like have it be a positive sports experience for 2022 across the board. I'm sorry. It's 6 days in. I already.
The Shaka, one shining moment. And she's.
Oh no!
That's gonna be burned into my head forever. That is his legacy for me. I'm sorry, Shaka, you're a good dude, but the one shining moment pick, that's your legacy here, buddy. Good luck at Marquette, but that to me is where we left off with you. And I don't. The thing about the tournament with Texas, if Texas, and Texas will be a tournament team. Like I don't want anybody to feel like that this team's gonna fall off a cliff. Like Texas is gonna make the NCAA tournament. It's going to happen unless something extremely drastic happens, something crazy. COVID takes over this team.
Even then, I think this is going to be a top 64 type team in the country. Yes. They're going to get into the tournament. The Big 12 alone, if they can they'll be fine.
Right. And the test will be there. And I love the fact that they finished the regular season at home against Baylor and then on the road against Kansas. And then you go into the Big 12 tournament with that iron sharpens iron sort of mentality. You've played tournament level basketball already with teams that
starting in February.
With teams that
in January
will have been favored. Yes, with middle to end of January, with teams that some people will pick to win the whole thing. Period. Baylor will be picked by a lot of people to win it again. Kansas is Kansas. Every year they're in that conversation. And can Texas just stick around and play good enough basketball to make you feel and make themselves feel like they have a shot to make a run at this? Because like you mentioned, the style of basketball that Chris Beard plays lends itself to March basketball.
It travels.
Tournament time. It absolutely travels.
You can take it. You can take it to the tournament. You can take it on the road in these Big 12 games. Like, it's a style of basketball that travels, and that's why Beard. It may not always be pretty, but he's had good tournament runs. He took Tech to that national title game and went to overtime. That's what it travels. We mentioned this before. Like, 3-point shooters get called. Okay, well, at least the defense is going to hang you in the game.
100%.
And so, yeah, I think. Man.
If you're keeping teams to 55 to 60 points a game, you're going to be in games.
Right.
Period. At any level. And that's what they're going to do. And so that's the cautious optimism when we're talking about this basketball program there, that you feel like this team will be able to be in games no matter what. Will they be able to get over these humps that they haven't been able to quite get over yet? We'll see. I mean, the K-State team was decimated by COVID-19. And they still
showed some fight, though, man. They came out and put up a good fight to start that game.
And Texas started off so slowly, and I'm sitting here watching and thinking, like, God, this is the same story, different day. And then they find a way in the second half. Yep. The offensive pace increases, the defensive intensity increases,
adjustments,
and they come out of there. Yeah, what a concept, right? Adjustments in game.
Wow,
Kerry, we're seeing it, man. We're seeing it. So as long as this team continues to develop, I think Dylan Disu not being on the court when this season started, I think that hurt the overall picture of where Chris Beard thought he was going to be able to take this team.
Sure.
And now that we're seeing Disu playing double digit and into 20 minutes a game, we're seeing these guys figured out that he needs to play Marcus Carr 35 minutes a game.
Right.
We're seeing that Timmy Allen's going to play 33 to 35 minutes a game as long as he's not in foul trouble. Like, Beard's finding his guys, and now are those guys going to be able to find a way to make it work? And that's what's so great about college basketball, man, is that when you have the right players and when you have a coach whose system the players believe in, and it's like you said, the system that travels no matter where you go, you're in it, man. You're in it, and you're in the conversation, and you have a chance to make good things happen. And like you said, once you get past the Sweet 16, a couple of bounces goes your way, you're in the Final Four, and then who knows what, Yeah. So I'm not saying, you and I aren't sitting here saying that Texas is a Final Four team.
No.
But I do think, Kerry, that I'm not getting off of my preseason prediction that the ceiling for this team is a Final Four, just because of the style of play that Chris Beard brings and the talent on his roster.
And I agree with that. I think, like, the talent's there, the coaching is proven, and yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like we talked about, you get the right bounces, who knows where you're at. And I'm glad you mentioned Disu real quick on him. I think, like, it really is kind of restart. Like, when he came back, it is kind of starting over with figuring out how this roster can play together. And you think how close, like, the Seton Hall game was. Having Disu probably would have been the difference in that game.
Agreed.
It wouldn't have made much of a difference against Gonzaga, I don't think. It would have helped, but still Gonzaga, and you can't, like, but it definitely kind of changes the calculus of how this team operates together. And I think we're starting to see where Disu kind of like, whoa, we really did kind of miss him. Because we didn't see him to start the season. You didn't quite know what he was going to look like here. And now it's like, now he's
still getting his feet underneath him,
exactly.
His sea legs or whatever, if you will. And when I'm looking back at the Seton Hall game, and that was really one of the ones where we saw how the rotation was gonna tighten up. And you see a Timmy Allen 33 minutes, Marcus Carr 36, Courtney Ramey 30, Andrew Jones 32. And those are the sort of minutes that we're gonna start to see as this conference play ramps up. This rotation is gonna get much smaller. We're not gonna see as much as I love, what's the guy's name? The Tristan Lincoln.
Yeah.
We're not
Yeah.
going to see that guy get a ton of minutes here as conference play speeds up. And if we do, something probably went wrong. So
Or
I'm
it's a
not saying he's
blowout.
not a good kid, or it's a blowout. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we may see some of these games.
Positive mentality here.
Exactly. Yeah. But in these meaningful games against ranked teams, we know what the rotation is going to be.
Right.
And I think that as the longer that rotation plays together, the more they'll gel, and Chris Beard will make something happen here. So it's a good time coming off of a 5-7 football season, coming off of a basketball season where you get eliminated in the first round in the tournament. It does still feel like it's a good time to be fans of this program, to be a fan of both of these programs right now. And I mean, it's easy to say that with Texas being a top 15 ranked team right now, but it still feels like, should we buy into this? And I feel like we should. And I think that we're going to get to see some good basketball played here in the next couple of months. And we're going to see why Chris Beard was as highly sought after as he was, and why they're paying him what they're paying him. We're going to see it in year one, even with this sort of mishmash roster that he had to put together. We're going to see it.
Agreed. Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting few weeks around here. So not to mention baseball season coming up not too far away.
Who will be the number one ranked team in the preseason, by the way. And that's going to be something that we're going to talk a lot about on this show too. Like, that's another program where
the Runnin Horns are going to be bringing, this is going to be a fun time around campus.
Absolutely.
The spring's going to be interesting, but well, let's hit on let's get away from the 40 acres for a minute. Let's get into Austin FC for just a few. It's still an off season,
Zona
very
Verde.
short off season. I think we're only 50 or so days away from the opening day of the season, so it's coming up. If it's even that far away, I don't know. I think it maybe. I don't know. I mean, it's February.
It's about 50 days, yeah.
This roster's turning over. We're seeing some departures, some additions. The big news was Alex Ring signing his contract. I know people were kind of like, okay, well, he was brought in on it was kind of I think the end of a deal when he was brought in or whatever it was, but he is signed on for a longer term deal, which is great. The captain, and he's now a designated player in the team. We've talked about the designated player stuff here. How you get MLS contract stuff is so confusing. You could bring in economics doctorates in here, and they will even struggle to explain it. But basically, it's great to have the captain sticking around for a while now, and a foundation that they can kind of build around. But it sounds like Pochettino might be on the way out. This was a guy that was brought in as a designated player, and it just didn't pan out for him. It sounds like it's nearly a fit. It's just more of an announcement issue that he will not be back.
Right.
But he was brought in as a designated player, and I think whatever you want to call it, was he being played out of position? Did Wolf not utilize him correctly? I think there was a mixture of him being disinterested and being played out of position, and how much those two things contributed to each other, who knows, but it just didn't work out. This opens up some salary. You could basically say now that designated player spot was shifted over to Ring. Best of luck to him. We'll see, but that opens up a little bit of salary. We had a couple additions come in. Max Arruti he's now the first player that's played for all three Texas MLS teams. He was with Houston last season. That's a guy that's moved around a lot, but he's a goal scorer. He's a guy that loves to shoot the ball, which I think this team needed someone like this. I don't know if he's going to, you kind of think that Gite will start the season as the lead striker, but Arruti's kind of a guy that's proven what he can do in MLS. It wouldn't surprise me if he kind of is the guy to start off the season up front, given his, kind of success and the way he just likes to get the ball and shoot. But so we'll see there. Ethan Finley comes in. He's going to be more of a depth guy on the wing. He's a guy that's worked with Josh Wolf before, another player that, has familiarity there, but we'll see. But there's been a lot of, the departures that's much longer of a list. Before we get into that, any thoughts on the additions, Pochettino, anything you want to add on those?
Oh, you got your trivia question there. Arruti, the first guy to play for all three Texas MLS teams. That's an interesting tidbit there. But no, I think that I think that retaining Ring and what he brings to the table as captain of this club was important. I think for this club to continue to grow with the identity that I feel like Josh Wolf wants this club to have, and that Claudio Reyna wants this club to have from the higher level. I feel like if Ring didn't resign, if they weren't able to bring him back, that would have been a red flag to me.
That would
with
have been
the way
a problem.
that this club was being run. And not if Ring would have pushed his way out necessarily, but if there was some interest there and that they didn't bring him back. Yeah, does Ring pick up a yellow card here and there, and actually in a couple of reds as well? Like he
It's what you get with him.
Led the club with 2 reds last year, but that's the type of player that you get, exactly. And the intensity and what he brings to the club, he's the type of player that I want as my captain. And it makes me very happy that they've decided to make him a designated player, pay him some money, keep him happy. That the 2-year deal is guaranteed, the club option for the next 2 years as well, depending on how he is. And, because he's not a spring chicken, but he's also a guy that in this league specifically, you feel like he can contribute later in his career
Right.
in the midfield in this league. So I think that was a really nice work by Claudio Reyna and Josh Wolf to be able to lock him down for at least the next couple of years and keep that same attitude, because he really fits, I feel like, he fits in for what this fan base wants with this club. You got to have guys that are going to not take any shit off of anybody, that are going to defend your younger players, or any players for that matter, but especially your younger players that are still learning their way around this league and learning the best way to contribute. And when you've got a guy like, especially Danny Pereira, friend of the show,
Absolutely.
Yeah. Who was the number 1 draft pick last year by Austin FC. Like, that specifically was one of the reasons why I wanted Alex Ring to come back, for Pereira to stand at that learning tree with Ring, and hopefully those guys' health can hold up throughout an entire season.
Yeah, because when they were together, when they had consistent run together, partnered in that midfield, they looked great.
Yeah, and Pereira's only going to get better, and I think next season we're going to start to see the more forward side of his game develop. We're going to see Pereira scoring the ball, putting it in the back of the net more next season, making those forward pushes more often and getting that productivity out of it, health withstanding. And I'm excited for that out of Pereira. But no, Arudi coming in, Finley again, like you said, for depth. That's all great. This is good stuff. It
guys that have been around the league, they know
this club understands what they need to do to fill out a roster and to try to take a next step with who you already have on this club. We mentioned, my favorite guy on the club is Gallagher, and I'm very happy that they ended up bringing him back with that initial group. But also the fact that they brought back Stroud.
Yeah, I know we were nervous about that when he was announced as not being one of the, he wasn't like a club option kind of thing, but when they announced the like end of season moves of who wasn't being re-signed or optioned or whatever, the fact that he was on that list was a little concerning, because we would have, he's a guy that we've taken to. It's fun to watch, but sure. So to bring him back, and then Gallagher not being swept up in the expansion draft was great. Mackenzie Gaines is lost. This is a guy that showed some flashes, but and he's a local guy. So that story, his goal against LA last season was just amazing. What, great story for him, but all that, but also at the same time, like, I kind of understand it. Like he also didn't get a ton of playing time either, even with that. And so, if your option was to lose Gallagher or lose Stroud, but keep Gaines, I mean, out of all those, I kind of, as much as it, you hate to see him leave, my option would be, Gaines being swept up in that. So yeah, the hit on you, like Gallagher being back, another, he's only going to settle in more. Stroud, he's going to continue to develop. He's still such a young player. And so, yeah, those were big players coming back for me.
Yeah. And you mentioned, let's hit on some of these departures. You mentioned Gaines getting swept up in the expansion draft by Charlotte. And by the way, he's going to get the playing time there, and we're going to see the type of player that, but I agree with your point though. If we're talking about that trio there, I feel like the two that were retained, I feel really good about that. Gaines getting taken in the expansion draft. Sweat to KC on a free transfer. Are any, who else? Aiden Stanley to Miami on a free one. Beasler retiring, getting a year out of him was great. Having his presence on this club for a year, I feel like was so big. Berhalter's and Perez's loans ending, and then the three that were in that original group with Stroud, with Mane, Schoenfeld, and Scott. Not guys that I feel like we're gonna just, as Austin FC supporters, will miss in terms of what they presented or what they gave on the field. But any of these players, any of these other departures, really somebody to you that you look at and it's like, oh man, I really wish they would have hung around? Or are we seeing that these sort of these additions that we're bringing in now sort of filling in that depth that this club needs?
Sweat would have been the one where, because he started off the season starting at that left back spot. He had that terrible injury early on, and that's what put him out the rest of the season. And then Komanic basically takes the job and runs with it. And now he's been signed on a permanent deal. So he's not losing that job. But Sweat's a guy, he's getting up there in age a little bit. He still has something to provide. Signing him and having him as a depth player would have been nice. But and I think that's kind of, I don't know what Kansas City's lineup's going to look like for next season, but that might be essentially what he's doing with KC. But he's really the only one out of this list that would have been like, that would have been nice to keep around. But then, Jimenez can play either side. You talk about having some depth there. It's, you'll have Lima and Komanic, I think, starting on the right and left. They're back on the defense, and you can have Jimenez kind of step in and play either one of those roles if needed. And, so keeping Sweat wasn't mandatory, but would have been nice. But other than that,
again, these are depth guys, right?
Yeah.
These are depth guys. These are roster filler. These are guys that will usually make the 18, but you probably knew that a lot of these guys weren't going to see time. And like you said, injuries played a part in that for some of them. Just not being a fit for the way that this club ended up running itself in the later part of the season, when they did see a lot of success. We forget that Austin FC got 18 out of the last possible 21 points that they could have earned at the end of this season. I believe it was 6 out of the last 7 matches that they won, or maybe it was 15 out of the last 18 points. Either way, there was a level of success that we saw towards the end of last season that makes you feel like, okay, with who was getting that playing time, with the way that they were playing, and what you could maybe see coming in the future with some of these guys coming in, this club is set up with Wolf to take that next step, maybe make the playoff. I feel like playoffs, even though last year, Kerry, we sort of thought that the playoffs were a possibility. I feel like this was a playoff atmosphere that we know that we were there, that this is a playoff atmosphere.
We saw it.
We were a part of it, that these are playoff type atmospheres every night at Q2. And now I do feel like that with a year under his belt as a skipper, with Josh Wolf being able to lead this club, really come into himself even more as a head coach. I feel like if we don't see that progress next season, if we don't see Austin FC take a step forward, then we can start having a conversation about whether or not Josh Wolf is the right guy. I'm willing to give him another season to sort of see where that development goes, especially with how the season ended. Now, you see that all the time, in any sport. Oh, finish strong and won 4 out of the last 5, and that's not a guarantee that leads
right
over into the next season, obviously. But I think there is a reason for optimism when you're talking about the way that this club, with the way that these players have developed playing together. Again, it's the same situation that we're talking about with the Chris Beard-led basketball team. This was an expansion team. These were guys that hadn't played together.
In a COVID season where they couldn't even spend time around each other and get to know each other and train and all those kinds of things. They were all, and I think that gets lost a little bit in that what the buildup was for this club prior to the season starting. This wasn't, not only wasn't it an expansion team, but they couldn't even spend time together. They couldn't even figure out who they were as individually and all those kinds of things. And this is, I mean, this is really the first true off season they've been able to spend together. And, I think that plays a big role, and it is important, and it helps with the chemistry. And you are right about Wolf, though. I think that, there was a lot of aspects of last season that kind of, especially like, with there not being a true striker, Danny Hosen getting hurt, and him not being effective even when he did play early in the season, and like players being forced to play out of position due to injuries, those kinds of things, that he got a little bit of a pass. But, I think coming into this offseason now, you talk about Beasler retiring, you kind of look at how this team's set up right now and the talent that's been bought, that's been put up front. Their midfield's looking good. Like, if they go and just spend big money on a defender or a couple defenders to bolster that back line, that's where you go into the season and say, like you mentioned, if it doesn't pan out this year, a lot of questions are going to start to be asked. And I think they should be, if that's the case, because I think they're much better positioned now, barring the defense. I think the defense needs some additions, but you can't rely on Cascante and Romagna to stay healthy and fit and develop, especially Romagna, who's shown flashes, but you can't just, there's got to be more than that there. So it's going to be interesting. And the transfer window's open. Hell, there might be something, by the next time that we record, another, a signing announced, a departure announced. It's a work in progress, and it will be all the way up until the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, again, are you developing or are you not as a coach? Are you developing yourself? Are you developing your team? If the answer to either one of those is no, you're gone. And Wolf will have a shot at this year to show us that he can do both. And I feel like that, I know we'll be in attendance at a ton of games again. Like, it's just, I'll be at opening night. I don't know if you have tickets to that one yet.
I've got season tickets this year. And the first couple games, some just inconsiderate people have decided to have weddings those days. And so I don't know if I'll be in attendance the first two games or not, but
what's wrong with these people? Don't they know it's footy season's coming around? Like, what's going on?
I don't know. It's coming out of their wedding gift allowance. So it's, that is being taken into consideration. So
excellent.
But
excellent. As it should, whoever you are.
Right. You know who you are. I don't know if they're viewers. I don't think they are. Whatever.
If they're not,
they should be. See, that's another aspect of it.
Yeah, well, if you're not, especially if you're not tuning in, if you're not subscribing, if you're not smashing that subscribe button, you might get some napkin rings or something for your wedding present. That's about it.
Turkey platter.
Yeah, maybe gravy boat.
Oh, I don't know. There's a lot to be said about a well-designed gravy boat.
Yeah, well, I think there's levels of gravy boats, and that'll be another discussion on another episode of the Bacon and Egg Show. But we'll get into that another time.
Yeah, we'll save that for the middle of summer shows when.
The dog days, when all we're talking about
is
how our Astros are leading the AL West by 7 games already, and there's not much else to talk about. So.
Yeah, boring stuff. Just the usual.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, this has been good. Good to get back at it. I think we'll leave it here. I'm gonna go look at my gravy boat collection. See how I haven't checked in on that for a while.
Yeah, but enjoy that, man.
Go round it out.
It's nice.
So
very nice.
Oh,
very peaceful, calming.
It is. Settles the mind. So,
yes. Yeah.
Well, man, let's do it again. Let's do this again soon. Let's see. We got some basketball this week. We got signing day coming up soon. But yeah, man, let's do this again soon.
Yeah, good stuff, man. Good show today. Thanks for listening, everybody. We appreciate y'all. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, everybody. See ya.
Okay.
ATX representing. Fatal, baby. All in 06 on a Saturday. Can the drip and swing a swing?